What does it mean to be gaslit? Well, it means over time, either you're convincing or you're being convinced that what you think, feel, believe, perceive is inaccurate or invalid, right? So our values, this is what this can sound like sometimes. Somebody convinces me to have a value that I didn't have previously, or that if I have this value, that this is how I should live it out. Maybe I would have lived it out a different way, but they convinced me through covert behaviors that if I have this value, there's only one way.
Hello, everybody. I am here with Sarah Morales. Sarah, you have a cool little niche. And as I've met a bunch of the folks through the AppStats community, your name has come up over and over again in terms of this very specific issue that you have kind of latched onto and brought voice to. And I'm really excited about this conversation because as you were kind of describing it, and I've watched a lot of your content online, I do think, very similarly to how empathy is been distilled to a really, really small thing, even though it's a really, really big word. I think the same goes for gaslighting, which is what we're going to talk about today. We have zoomed in on a very, very small portion of it. And, it's typically the most egregious. It's like, oh, this is gaslighting and this is inappropriate and it happens here and he needs to stop. After consuming your content and talking to you, kind of have to revisit it. It's an interesting, it's way bigger, I think, than people are giving it credit. And I think it shows up differently. At least I'll tell you this. I found myself gaslighting my wife, way, 2.5, but it looked different. It wasn't like the same, self-protection gaslighting. It was, I spiced it up and now I injected all the recovery language into it, but it's still gaslighting. And I think we need to be careful of that. It happens by accident a lot of the time. And the harm that it causes the relationship is tragic, right? It burns trust, it drives you guys apart. And I think it deserves a bigger conversation. That's what we're going to do today. So
love it.
Kind of, as you heard me say this, kind of introduce to the audience why you felt so called to educate people around the effects of this.
Yeah. So as I was telling you earlier, I got my start working for a CSAT in Austin, Texas. And what I noticed right away after I had learned about gaslighting for my own healing, and I started using it with my clients, they would be telling me stories about guys that I knew were in good recovery, and they were still doing what I now would call low-level gaslighting behaviors. Right. And so it didn't make sense to me because what we have been pitched for so long is that gaslighting is this nefarious thing. It's the most vile thing that somebody can do. And all people that do it are narcissists. And, there's basically an equal sign in between the two. And it just wasn't lining up. And, I was writing these blogs and doing these things at the onset of my career. I was kind of one of the pioneers. You had Dr. Robin Stern and a couple other people, but not a lot of people were talking about just gaslighting. And I would have people write into me and say, hey, this is happening, but it doesn't line up with all of these things that you've said here. So am I being gaslit? And I was like, I better put on the brakes here. I need to really understand this more before I try to teach others about it, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm that math science nerd. Like those were my favorite classes all throughout school. And so I just kind of applied my super analytical mind to this thing called gaslighting. And I was like, I'm not gonna worry about intention or levels of awareness because those aren't things that we can know for sure in another human being. And I'm simply going to look at what are the behaviors that are present in the person that is doing the gaslighting and what is the experience that is present in the victim, if you will. And just really start to look at what are the patterns that we can identify that happen in gaslighting. And the rest is history, as they say. But I did it because, you asked me why did I get into it? What I heard over and over and over again, first as I was working with partners, was this is the missing piece. Like understanding this and especially being able to get out of this fear-based perspective of gaslighting, as well as understanding the different ways that we can experience gaslighting. I come from the belief, it's my personal belief and way that I work with gaslighting, is that everybody experiences all three types of gaslighting at some point in their life, which the three types are: we are the gaslighter, we gaslight other people, and we gaslight ourselves. And so I believe somewhere on the scale, right? Not everybody is, that kind of Charles Boyer character from the original OG movie. Not everybody is the narcissist or the sociopath. Some people are doing it as a shame response.
Yeah.
Still causes trauma in the other person. And that's the important part. A lot of people like to give me crap. I don't know what kind of explicitity we have here. So
I've dropped a handful of F-bombs on here by accident. So it happens.
I'm trying to self-censor here. Shoot, I lost my train of thought. You do edit, right?
Well, can you define, because I know there's people listening to this, and I would say, my gosh, out of all the words in the kind of betrayal, trauma, healing space, gaslighting is probably the one that I've heard the most inaccurately defined. I think I've heard so many different definitions. And I think the challenge with that is a lot of them are loaded, which force everybody to think, oh, gaslighting is just this. And I would love for you to define for the audience what your definition of gaslighting is so that they can appreciate the scope of it.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I took out the intent and awareness. That's not part of it for me. For me, it's just what are the things that are present in the pattern. So we've got two sides, right? It's kind of like an old easy algebra equation, right? A plus B equals X times C or whatever. So on one side of the pattern, you've got a person or a group of people. So it can be religious establishments. It can be politics. Right? So one person or a group of people through covert behaviors, covert simply meaning hidden. Okay. That's one side of the equation. Okay. Other side of the equation is convinces another that what they think, believe, perceive, or feel is inaccurate or invalid. So what I did on that side of the equation was make it a little bit more precise, because when we're saying, you're just causing this other person to accept another reality. Well, what does that actually mean? Right? Like they're convincing me that the sky is actually purple instead of blue. Like, what do you mean? What does it mean to be gaslit? Well, it means over time, either you're convincing or you're being convinced that what you think, feel, believe, perceive is inaccurate or invalid. Right? So our values, this is what this can sound like sometimes. Somebody convinces me to have a value that I didn't have previously, or that if I have this value, that this is how I should live it out. Right? Maybe I would have lived it out a different way, but they convinced me through covert behaviors that if I have this value, there's only one way to. So it's not always to cover up an addiction, right? Or a secret behavior. There's a lot of different ways. And so you're absolutely right that it's been taken and like put into 30-second TikToks when it's a very complex experience.
Well, I think to speak to that, I think I was gaslit by some of my CSATs. And I don't think they meant to. I think that they were so bought in their little CSAT way that they said, oh, Roland, it's this, not the thing you're saying. And I felt extremely gaslit because I'm like, I don't know. I feel like what I'm saying is, I feel like I'm not really off base here now. And so, but I was, I was led to believe like, oh, no, you're crazy. You have to listen to me. And so I think and then on that same point, so, well, let me rephrase it this way. So kind of what you're saying, because I totally agree. When we see all the Instagram reels and the TikTok reels, it's always so zoomed in of, oh, honey, oh my gosh, I can't believe you thought that I went to a massage parlor. I went there to get my low back pain taken care of. How dare you think that, right? So we all think about that the initial lie to try to save face and have your wife not discover the more that is behind what you've been doing, right? So that's what everyone zooms in on. But I think here's another way that as I was hearing you say it, let's fast forward. Let's get into a year and a half, 2 years, 2.5, 3 years into relational recovery from this. I love what you said. And I want you to speak to this. So my wife now has this reality that if because I want you to kind of clarify this. She now has a reality that let's say, oh, if he actually loved me, or if he was attracted to me, he wouldn't have done this. Okay. So now she has this reality, but I think we get into this tough place was now she's trying to tell me my reality that, oh, you did this because you're bored of me in bed. You're not attracted to me. Sure. How do we from a healthy standpoint, Sarah, how do we help her understand that that is actually not my reality, because there's a lot of times where I felt gaslit because she's like, no, you only did this for this reason. And now I'm getting defensive because it's like, well, hey, you don't get to gaslight me because you're dead set on that. But then again, here so now I'm mad at her reality, and now I'm trying to sell her on mine, but then now I'm gaslighting her to a degree. So I think, as I heard you describe it, it's like, it's not just that trying to cover up and save face. As we fast forward, now we're having a genuine conflict of realities going forward. What do we do with that? How do we not gaslight each other and come to some degree? Because I mean, Sarah, let's be real. People have differing realities. This is not abnormal.
Absolutely. So firstly, I want to go back to my definition and point out covert. Okay. It's one of the things that has started to happen now. I feel like when I first started working with gaslighting, I was going and I was telling people what it is. And now I feel like I'm going in and I'm correcting like all the stuff that people have wrong. Right? Like I feel like that's a larger part of my job now. There has to be covert behaviors. So if we're in an argument, right, and I have a different perspective than you, or a different even reality than you, because I'm coming from inside of me, you're coming from inside of you, right? Even if I'm being an asshole, that doesn't mean I'm gaslighting unless I'm doing covert behaviors, right? So where we get stuck is when we say that my reality is the only reality that is acceptable here. Right. That's what we have to really look out for. And one of the ways that this happens the most, and I kind of was smiling as you were talking, because this has happened so often that I came up with an analogy that is in all my courses. And it's what I call my intention versus impact analogy.
I like it.
And so basically, I'm going to make it a very, very abridged version, but basically let's just imagine, I know your audience. I work with a lot of guys in this audience through core relational recovery in Florida. And most of them golf. Right?
It's funny you mentioned that. I had a bunch of guys who just left a retreat and they stayed an extra day and golfed together. So yes, that is not uncommon.
So my analogy involves golfing. Shocker. But basically, let's just imagine you're getting ready for a golf tournament, right? And you've got all your golf stuff everywhere. You're cleaning your clubs, your bag, you're making sure your shoes are all ready and clean. Maybe you have your little practice putter out and are, practicing the short. I'm not a golfer, so I forget what they're called.
Short game.
Short game, right? And your wife comes in and you're like, hey, hon, and you want to go give her a hug. And as you do, you trip over all of your golf stuff. And as you do, you fall into her. And as you fall into her, she falls backwards and breaks her arm. The result of that mess, if you will, is a broken arm. Your reality is that you are not trying to harm her. Her reality is that even though you didn't try to harm her, you did. Right. And so where the gaslighting happens is when she's trying to talk about, in the example that you just gave, is she's trying to talk about the impact and you're trying to talk about the intent. And in doing so, you're both trying to convince each other that what you're saying is the right thing. And you actually are both right. But by standing like your stake in the ground kind of thing, you're invalidating each other's reality. And that's where the gaslighting part comes into play.
So that is, in that definition, you would accuse both parties of gaslighting each other. I mean, low level, but still.
Potentially. I'd have to hear what was actually said.
Because I think what I heard you say, which is very important, because I, as we were having this conversation, to be honest, I started getting insecure around, oh my gosh, am I gaslighting my wife? Even to this day, right? Like, because that's not what I mean to do. But I think what helped with your definition was covert deception. Like, and I think I think that gave me some peace, because I tell her my reality. I tell her my perception of hers. And then I'm trying not to hide how I don't particularly agree with hers. Right. But I'm also telling her mine, and I'm opening up. So I'm not trying to withhold anything to give me some kind of strategic advantage. So am I healthily communicating? Because it's scary. The last thing I want to do is assume that my reality is correct, because time and time again, Sarah, and I, most addicts, my wife asks me all the time, do you trust yourself to protect the marriage? And my answer is constantly no. And it's because it's like, gosh, I lived in such a delusional place. I just don't know if I'll ever trust myself again, because it's like, the fact that I was totally unaware that I was ever going to get caught, that there's going to be any sort of circuit, now it's like, oh my gosh, I don't ever trust myself now, period. And I like that I don't, because I feel like that's actually the safer of the two options. I feel like if I fall into patterns and pretend like I'm cured or recovered with an ED ending, that I feel like that's more risky than me constantly tastefully having some distrust of my own reality because of my upbringing, my childhood. I'm a kind of a dangerous person to be with if I'm not hypervigilant. But anyways, that was a lot there. But so I'm just trying to help clarify how guys can. What we're not telling you to do is not speak up. That's not what we're telling you to do. So I don't want guys to be scared of expressing their realities.
Right.
But can you help people determine where that line is, where you are actually gaslighting somebody and harming your relationship?
Yes. So there's, again, very nuanced. But I did a tiny little bit of preparation because I'm a nerd and I like to be prepared. And I anticipated some sort of question like this. And so the number one way that people kind of low level do gaslighting behaviors and they're kind of unaware that they're doing it is when they engage in DARVO. Are you familiar with that term?
I am not.
Okay. So DARVO, ARVO. And it's basically defend or deny, attack.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Reverse victim offender, right? So where we get into trouble is when that defensiveness comes up, right? And then so we defend or deny that we did what that person is saying that we did, because again, they're talking about impact. We're talking about intention, right? So if I get into my defensiveness on the low level side of gaslighting, like kind of reasons people do gaslighting behaviors is what I would combine as a boundary issue and poor communication, right? So it's hidden, right? It's not above board, right? Like I am not intentionally trying to manipulate or trying to intentionally define for you what your reality is, right? It's low level. And if we are not careful, simply the way that we are communicating can lead to a gaslighty sounding thing, right? Like even as the expert that I am, like I can get in my defensive place and I'll say something to my partner. I'll be like, oh wait, hold up, like beep, 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 back up the truck, right? Like, let me say that again differently.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. I love that. I love that definition. That's perfect. It's I like to use myself for example, because it's easier for me to use myself because I know me and my pathology. So for me, I felt scapegoated and gaslit my entire life. And so if I ever feel like someone's trying to question my intent, which surprise, surprise, betrayal, trauma, good luck guys, buckle up, buckle up for that one. That's a lot. So constantly through this, the beginning, in the first year and a half, Sarah, first 2 years, it was pretty easy for me to be like, Roland, you screwed up, like chill out. She's hurting. But I'll tell you, after that 2 year mark, I started to get a little pissed off because it's like, listen, I'm sick of you telling me what my intent was. I'm sick of you telling me, I felt accused. And then to your point, I became defensive. I felt like I needed to stick up for myself. I felt like it was the CSATs and everybody was against me. They're trying to strap me up and ask me questions and polygraphs. I felt I felt like a second-class citizen, which made me then kind of migrate towards what would look like some gaslighty things. And honestly, that was a really hard, I think I've heard this from a lot of couples, that 2 year mark, it's almost just as hard as the initial part. Because in the initial part, obviously it's just pure chaos and hell. But then at year two, it's tough because there's a lot of intense emotions, a lot of sadness, a lot of perceptions of being attacked and unloved and not acknowledged. So, kind of back to your point there is, as we're becoming activated like that, give me like a real-time tool that I can use to make sure I don't gaslight her. Cause that's the last thing I want to do when I'm in that triggered moment. What do couples do in this intense phase? Because I think it can happen both ways. I mean, I felt through that phase, I felt gaslit by my wife because she was like, oh, no, me and my girls, like, this is what and you're wrong, right? Because this is what I heard on this podcast and from Betrayed Women. So I felt a little bit gaslit too, was, no, you don't get to feel that way because I read a podcast that said you don't get to. And that felt extremely unfair to me too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, it's a normal human natural thing to feel the desire to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that can lead to a lot of resentment
Mm-hmm.
and defensiveness. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely. I totally hear what you're saying. And I think for me, the number one thing, if I'm going to give my guys in recovery, and I'm using that word because what we talked about ahead of time, whether it's, recovery from sex and porn, whether it's a love, whether it's an ego, right, whatever it is, right, what you're in recovery, basically becoming the highest version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What I give to them as the most important thing to do is I just like pretend you're going on a hiking, expedition, and your two best friends, your guides, are curiosity
Mm-hmm.
and and patience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's embracing the curious why. And that's not just about you, it's about the other person. So if you're trying to not gaslight your person, one of the best things you can do in that moment is say, I wonder what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
wonder what their experience is. I wonder what's being triggered in me, right? Like I'm having a big response. I wonder what, right? And that right away can help get you out of
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the intention and thinking about impact. I wonder why she's feeling upset. I'll talk all the time to my guys about how the same situation might trigger your partner three different ways. One time it's about security, one time it's about being, enough, right? The same situation, right? And another time it might be something else, right? It might be thinking about the future, right? This same situation. So we, my guys get triggered and then, the partners get triggered and then the guys get, defensive or resent, whatever it is. And the curiosity goes out the door.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if you can stay in a place of being curious and, or the word I will say, aware, try to stay in a place of
Mm-hmm.
awareness. That's why so many people do all this work around being present. Right. If we can stay present and in the moment and tap into curiosity and or awareness, we can get to this place of, okay, I'm feeling defensive. That resentment is coming up. I don't want to respond out of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I can,
And for the guys listening to that, how I've navigated that, Sarah, is I kind of get ahead of it and almost give her permission. I kind of say like, hey, listen, I get activated and I feel accused. I feel, and so here she is trying to be heard. And then I'm over here and my first instinct is you need to stop talking so I can tell you why you're wrong. Right. And so I think where I've kind of got navigated that is I stay ahead of it and I just tell her, hey, I want to grow out of this. This is not a go-to strategy but depending on how it's phrased. And what I would tell the guys is try to, when it happens, try to tell her to say, hey, you remember that thing that I tell you I do? It's happening to me right now.
mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't do this every time. I probably only do it 1 in 10 times. So I know I'm sounding more woke than I really am in the moment. It's very difficult for me to do that. But here's two, give her permission to ask you if that's what's happening too, because that's really helpful. So I'll miss the opportunity to be self-aware, but I want her to. And guys, I'm telling you, give her permission because you will be mad when she does this. You will be really mad. It's so frustrating when she's like, "Hey, are you doing that one thing?" I'm always so mad because she's right. I am actually doing it. But at the same time, I gave her permission to call me out because I don't want to be that way. It's not helpful. It pulls us further apart. It never ends well. It could ruin the evening or the day, and then maybe even carry into the next day. Right. So that's kind of my tip is that awareness of, hey, I might get into a gaslighty place when I get like this, and then have her kind of call you out. And again, guys, you got to get to this place. I mean, it's not her. If you give her permission, you guys got to remember you gave her permission for you.
Yeah.
You gave her permission to help you be at your highest self. So if she does call you out and she is rightish, remember you did that so that you could treat her the way that you want to treat her. And so again, there's lots of guys that give them permission, and then when they call them out, the guys get angry. And again, we're trying to find a system here where you guys can help each other be in your adult and not get triggered into these childish kind of patterns.
Right. I mean, and that's the ideal, right? Like if you can have the partner be in a place where they're given permission And so they don't feel like they're kind of in a fight for their life. Right. And the other person is also then you're stepping more into that being that ally.
Right.
Right. And it changes the energy of that exchange. Instead of two people being against each other, it's two people wanting to heal the relationship and, giving each other permission to not be perfect and yet be wanting to not hurt each other. Right. And so that's huge. If the guys listening to this, if you can do that for your wife and your partner or however you title them, and they are able to really step into energy of my person is not looking for me to be their mom or their teacher or their coach or their therapist. They're giving me permission to say when I'm feeling like this is like, that's just such a huge, like, that would be amazing. So if you can do that, like, absolutely, I'm 100%.
Yeah. And she might be wrong, but here's what I would say is, okay, maybe you're not doing the thing, but again, you're probably doing something. Right. And if you're not doing something, she might feel like you are. So to me, regardless, it's a win-win-win all around. Either she's spot on and you are doing the thing that you told her you don't want to do, or she's picking up on something else. And it's still another opportunity to say, hey, you know what? As I think of it, I'm trying to win this argument. Yep. Right. And then you just own it. You say, hey, I do find, I'm going for a victory here. Right. I'm not actually invested in a healthy conversation. I'm trying to go for a W. So I would just say, guys, either way, it's a win-win-win all around for her to feel like she can speak up and say, hey, I'm picking up on some egoic nonsense here. Like, what's up? And then you guys can just kind of pause and say, interesting. What do you, and you can even ask her, and this is why I love doing parts work of some kind and then teaching her about your parts. Cause then she can kind of say like, hey, I'm feeling something here. And then you can help her say, hey, I'm feeling marginalized. I'm feeling, I'm feeling like you don't want to listen. And now I'm feeling the need to assert myself more and stick up for myself more. Right. But that's, a lot of advanced betrayal recovery is that you guys have got to get out of your mind and find a way to, again, I hope, the reason I was dialoguing with myself there was to help people understand we're not talking about her being your coach or therapist. That's not what we're trying to have you give her the data that you've gotten from your self-mastery work. And then she does the same. And you kind of help, you're curious around what's coming up. Right.
Right. I mean, we're trying to change patterns, which has to do with rewiring the brain. And we can either do that by ourselves or we can do that in community. And who's all a part of our team, right? And who better than our intimate partner? And to be clear, I am not an advocate, even though I worked with partners for a long time. I'm not an advocate for partners being one up. I'm not an advocate for them defining for my guys in recovery their reality either. I'm not an advocate for them being mean, like none of those things. And so I'm not asking anybody that's listening to say that if your partner says you're doing that thing, that automatically means that you have to agree that you are. And our journey of becoming more and more self-aware is going to have us giving different answers to when they say that, right? And at minimum, what you can do is, you know what? I'm not aware that I'm doing it, but let me go look at my questions that my coach or my therapist gave me. Let me go look at let me check in with my part or whatever, right? Like, let me practice some self-awareness. Let me see if I can figure out what I was doing that, right? Like, you can do that. You don't have to have the answer right away. And then you can come back, and I make up from the work that I've done on both sides. Just doing that work is going to help the partner feel safer.
Yeah. I send my wife emails. I have a worksheet that I give all my clients that breaks down your worldview. And then I send it to my wife and I say, hey, when you said this was my reality. And here's the belief system that I had that led me to the emotional response that I had. But before you guys send, go down to the bottom and test all of your beliefs for accuracy. And then send her that part too. So say, hey, in this world, a good wife would blah, 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 blah. Then at the bottom, I would say, is it possible that she would love to come from that same exact place too? But because of the complete lack of safety and the repetitive lying, she's not able to give you that same, so you're calling awareness to, hey, a good wife would do this. And she would be like, yeah, and I would love to be a good wife, but under this constraints that you have me, I can't control what my nervous system is doing right now. Absolutely. And I'm asking you, right? See what I'm saying? So it's this ownership on both sides of, you're entitled to your reality, but it's also your responsibility to see it as accurately as possible and not have it be self-serving. And I think that's what we see so much is, kind of to your point, it's the same thing. I see it all the time with the one up from the partners. I agree with you. I think this, I've heard professionals, some of the most respected in the industry, say, oh, we have to give them the one up. I don't know. I'm not sure that's necessarily true. I think that causes a lot of problems. I think, I think there's a time and a place for some grace, but I think we should call it grace and understanding rather than one-upness, right? I think there's a big difference between those two.
Huge difference, right? Like there's a difference between saying the onus is on the betrayer to restore safety versus saying I am one up and I'm in power and I'm in control. Right. Like I know there's a lot going around about a lot of different things, And, there's so many words that are thrown around very quickly, very lightly. And the brain wants to be able to put labels to things. It just wants to, right? For most of us, but that's not always helpful, right? Because we can put labels on things, like we can call things abuse. And does that mean I'm married? Like if gaslighting is abusive, which I would agree that it is on varying levels, does that mean I'm married to an abuser? Which to me is an important distinction, right? There's a difference between somebody who comes from an abusive mindset and somebody who has done abusive behaviors in their addiction or in their like there's a difference. Now they both cause trauma, but that infers different boundary needs, different amount of work, like for so many different things. And so I 100% agree with you.
And I like that we brought that up, because I think we do, as the cheating partner and betrayed partner, we need to be careful of, because again, a therapist can call something. And the thing though, that people don't realize about words is not all of us have the same definition of what a narcissist is.
Right, correct.
For some people, it is a uncurable sociopathic person that you need to be as far away from as possible. For me, I think when that word's spoken a lot, my definition of it is this person has areas, pillars of life where they trust no one but themselves to get their needs met in that area. I don't think that necessarily means that you have a personality disorder. I think we can have, for me, I'm narcissistic in a lot of areas, and but it's not because I am a narcissist or a sociopath. My childhood just led me to go on my own and really not listen to anybody else. So I look like a narcissist a lot. But truly, if you look at the true definition, there's a lot of hard, cut and dry things that I just factually don't fall into the category of, right? Yeah. So I think we're going to be careful with words, because the conclusion that our clients are drawing from those are all over the map, over the map. What empathy needs to look like, the definition to each partner of what empathy is different from partner to partner to partner. And it's tough to say that the guy's not empathetic because he doesn't do it the way you want it. We gotta be careful with that, because every guy in my group feels horrible. And I'll tell you right now, they do understand the impact. They really do understand what they did. And, maybe not out of the gates, but they've gotten to a point where they've understood it. So to say that they are disconnected or lack empathy, we got to be careful with some of that, because I don't know if that's necessarily always true. So I wanted to ask something, and I want to give a disclaimer to all the guys listening to this, because Sarah and I have said over and over and over on this, we want to be careful, because the goal is not to weaponize information. Right. And that happens so often in this space, darn it. And all it does is delay your recovery. Yep. So if you guys are going to do that with each other, stop. It's not going to help. Her getting equipped so that she can throw stuff in your face, and then you getting, the battle of the podcast. I can't tell how many times I've seen that. You need to listen to this, especially at minute 12. And then she sends, you need to listen to this one at minute 37. And it's just, that's triangulation. We're not trying to, we don't need to do that. The goal is to collect the information and develop a communication strategy between the two of you. You're trying to stay freaking married here. It's not a contest. But so as I ask you this question, I just want all the guys listening, please take what she's about to say and use it for good. Do not use this against your wife. Sarah, when you see betrayed partners gaslighting, what categories do this fall into? And the reason I bring this up, guys, is actually not for you. It's because I have found out that half my listeners are your wives. And so the reason I bring this up is not for the guys to weaponize this information. It's for the wives who are listening to this, so they can kind of be aware of when they're maybe crossing the line by accident too.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complex answer. I'll just speak to some of them because it can be all over the place. Sure. One of the reasons I talk about people that do gaslighting behaviors, I think a lot of partners fall into is the line is desperate for a specific outcome. Okay, so in this case, they're desperate to know what's true. Okay. Does that make sense? Like I will do whatever I have to do kind of a thing. And a lot of the low level gaslighting behaviors. Okay. Let me back up 1 second. I have this scale that I teach about in my courses. And it has to do with the level of awareness. Okay. On the top. And you can be unaware all the way to fully aware. And there's 2 criteria for that. Unaware. Well, let me back up. The criteria is aware of the behavior that you're doing and aware of the impact on the other person of gaslighting. Okay. Not of all the extracurricular stuff, just of the gaslighting. Okay. So unaware is I'm both unaware of the behavior that I'm doing and unaware of the impact. Semi-aware is I'm typically aware of the behavior. Like I might know I'm lying, but I'm not really fully aware because I'm mostly looking out for number 1 of the impact. And then obviously fully aware is aware of both. Okay. So most partners and even in that case, most low level gaslighting behaviors come from the unaware place. I'm not even aware that I'm doing this behavior because it's a self-defense mechanism. It's a response to fear, to shame. It's a learned behavior in family of origin. Those kinds of things, right? So when a partner is desperate for that truth or desperate to feel safe and they're worried, their brain is telling them he's still lying and their gut is all messed up because of the gaslighting that has happened and that hasn't healed yet. They're so desperate, they'll kind of pull at any straw that will get them that feeling of safety and truth that they need because they want to be able to trust their partner.
Yeah,
they want to be able to feel safe.
So true, right?
Yeah. And so it's not an in alignment way to get those things, but they're desperate. Right? That's one reason.
Well, and guys, you can empathize. I mean, all the gaslighting we did, it wasn't because we wanted to wreck their world.
Exactly.
It was desperate to, oh God, please don't think this about me. Please don't leave me. Please don't judge me. Please don't take the kids from me. Please, it's again, I agree, but the essence there is it doesn't excuse it. It doesn't excuse it at all. But to that point, it's the desperation that we can kind of own and be aware of. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say it takes the partners out of their place of authentic power and it takes the recovering person out of their place of authenticity.
Yeah. I like that. I agree. Yeah.
So it's not, even if you get the outcome that you wanted, you lose something in the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why, right. It's not always nefarious, but it's always not great.
100%, 100%.
You know what I mean? I think a couple other reasons I'll put out there real quick could be reactive, kind of like, and this would probably be not so much your group, but I just do want to put it out there in case any people are listening. That would be with somebody that's probably with someone that's a little bit more antagonistic and maybe intentionally is poking the bear and or kind of learned it in their relationship. So that's kind of what I mean by reactive. And then the third reason is where I come from. Everybody gaslights until they learn how nuanced it is. And they're like, oh crap, I didn't even realize. Right. Like I remember Dr. Jake Porter and I talking one time and he was telling me the story about how he realized he was gaslighting his like little and like toddler, like trying to get her to eat her peas or something like that. And he's like, I was just gaslighting her, wasn't I? So I'm like, kind of you were, Jake, right? Like, you love peas. She clearly didn't love peas, right? Like it's kind of an innocent version, but that is gaslighting. You're trying to convince the child, right? So some of it are just learned behaviors. Our society You talked about a lot of the reasons why the guys that listen to this podcast have ended up the way that they're. Well, it's because they were gaslit about what it means to be a man and what it means to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Other people defined for them how to feel good about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's gaslighting,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we've all been gaslit. So any reasons that partners might be gaslighting, typically it's along any of those. I mean,
Yeah, and I love the way
be
you're
other reasons
speaking
too,
of this, because it's become such a dirty word. Like if you do it, you're a total monster. And I think to your point, I think this is, varying levels of this happen all the time. And I think, we focus on the big ones, which is she's asking for the truth and you are right there in front of her at that moment. And she can remember, I promise you, these ladies remember those top 10, they remember the word for word what you said and word for word how they asked you. And we focus so much on those and we label them and but I think to your point, and I love this conversation for this reason, because I think the reason I got so excited when I was introduced to you to have you here was it's really hard, I think, for the partners to heal from those top 10 gaslight moments because they're just so ugly. You just should never do that to your partner, right? And it's just, it sticks with them. I mean, gosh, I know, because you've worked with, it is burned into their head. And it just, and I think this conversation is healthy because I think just like I'm having Stevie Hall, I don't know if you know Stevie. I love her work on empathy, but she's speaking to my group privately tomorrow night.
Oh, cool.
And same thing, she's doing empathy, and she's doing the same thing you're doing. Is guys, this is a lot more than a word, and we really need to appreciate the size of this. We need to understand the psychology behind why it's done or why it isn't done, and it's just. And I think for everybody listening, I think my whole goal of this conversation with Sarah was to. I believe if you appreciate the size of things and you can understand that it's not that their intent was not necessarily malicious. A lot of it is just out of this. It's self-serving. And again, I'm not excusing that, but the goal was actually, and I know this is so hard for the ladies to hear, but the goal was he was trying to save the marriage. And I know it was inappropriate, but if you look at the intent, it truly was, oh my God, if she finds out about this, I'm going to lose custody of the kids. She's going to make me move out. And again, I'm not justifying what he did, but I do think there's some peace in understanding that it was actually said out of a place to save the family, not destroy it. And I know that's, again, it doesn't undo what was done, and it certainly doesn't help you forget. But I do think there's some peace in understanding that this is done by a lot of people by accident. I think parents gaslight their kids. I don't think Jake's story by any means is rare. I would venture parents gaslight their children heavily until the age of 10. And I think they keep it up even through their 20s. They're all constantly trying to manipulate their children into a convenient reality that the parent wants, whether it's forcing them to have kids, get married, whatever it is. And so I do think appreciating that this is not as abnormal, and it's not sex addicts are not the only people that gaslight people. And I think just understanding the human condition can help us I don't know if get past is the right word, but come to peace with why it happened and living in a reality where maybe he doesn't have to gaslight you again if you guys can come up with healthy communication strategies around your conflicting realities. And that was kind of the last thing that I had written down was there is conflicting realities in every relationship, whether you've been betrayed or not. That was my final question was, if you were to speak to couples who really have been affected by gaslighting or trying to heal and don't want to do any more gaslighting, what would you say to them in terms of calling out the elephant in the room and really kind of dealing with this in a healthy way together and not weaponizing it?
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's why I've done what I do. It is a nuanced thing. It's an important thing. I'm going to borrow an idea from Dr. Ramani, where she talked about how people talk about narcissism. And I think it's the same with gaslighting, where it's like, if I'm coming to your house and I'm going to bring a cake, I'm not going to tell you that I'm bringing eggs and flour and sugar and butter, all the ingredients that come up. I'm saying I'm make a cake. You intuitively know that there are all of these things, these ingredients, if you will, but yet it's easier. It helps me communicate what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm wanting. Right. So I believe that gaslighting is an important word because it does convey an experience that is a very important one for us to understand. And it's very nuanced. And if we're really going to heal, especially couples that have experienced a lot of it, we need to understand both what it is and why we've done it, especially for my guys that are in recovery. Right. And to
understand, I think the cool thing of this conversation, and to understand that you guys might not have stopped too. So I think that's the point here is like, as we've had this conversation, Sarah, I have just gotten like, right when we hang up, I'm going to text my wife and say, hey, I just want you to know I may have accidentally gaslit you in the last like 6 months. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I did. Let's come home and have a conversation about how I can't. But that's where my wife and I've got to is I'm at a place where I want her to know that I just really want her to know that if I do hurt her, I'm trying not to, and I'm open, I'm all ears to whatever I can know to not hurt her in the future. Right.
Yeah. And that's why I think going back to that golf analogy with intention and impact, with couples that want to heal, it's important for them to both get on the same page of the mess that was in your life caused probably multiple broken arms. Right. And for both people to understand that working first of all, asking to be worked on, like if your partner is asking you to clean up your mess, that's valid. Right. Like it's valid to say, I'm not adding more to my mess. Right. It's not getting any worse, but there's still stuff to clean up. And of course she's going to feel nervous to walk in the room because I could trip again and I could hurt her again. Right. So it's valid for her to ask me, and that can help the partner destigmatize the gaslighting. Because as long as she's feeling fear about it, it's going to cause a trauma response. And then your brain gets flipped and you can't think cognitively, and you can't like speak on the same level. So destigmatizing it and like that kind of shared understanding around this concept. And instead of looking at it as a heinous thing that only monsters do, saying it's not a healthy behavior for anyone. So let's figure out how to be curious. Right? How to slow down in our conversations, how to get curious, asking the other person, do you feel seen, is one of the best questions you could ask another person to stop gaslighting, or saying, I'm not feeling seen right now. Right? Not you are gaslighting me. I'm not feeling seen. Right? Like that to me is like the starting point of any couple. Like get on the same page.
And that's exactly why I brought you here, because I find if we distill these things down into their parts and we rehumanize them, I'm going to say it again because I think it's so important. Rehumanize, like it's so what Sarah told us today. It's so true. There's reasons why we gaslight. And again, we're not excusing it. I'm just saying there's a lot of peace at understanding that on both sides, because I do think so much of this Sarah is grace on both parties. I mean, if you guys want to thrive on the other side of this, avoiding divorce is easy. You just go through the motions and I mean that, we've proven that, right? 84% of couples who go to the disclosure table stay together, right? So we know that if we follow these steps, we can avoid divorce, and we've gotten pretty good at that as a field. But again, that's not the goal. None of the couples come to us to
that's avoid a low bar.
Divorce. Yeah, they come to us to, I want to bounce back from this, and I want to have a marriage better than the one I had before. I'm not trying to stay with this person who's done all these horrible things to me so I can be triggered for the rest of my life and live in a mediocre relationship. None of us want that.
No.
But I think what Sarah's saying is part of the recipe is we got to rehumanize all of these things and to me, if we don't, the relationship will not come back to a place that either of you are happy with. You're both going to feel on guard. You're going to feel the need to defend each other. You're going to feel the need to rectify the injustice on both sides, because the guys right at the 2-year mark, they start feeling really wronged and left behind, and they start kind of having, trauma responses of their own of, hey, I'm tired of being talked to like this. I'm tired of being treated like this. Right. So it's, to me, I love this conversation, Sarah, because I think understanding both parties need to understand what they did, and you guys need to come to a place of grace and commonality on this, and being able to call each other out when you do it, because it's not, I would venture to say this isn't going to be the last time that you will be gaslit or gaslight someone, and vice versa. And then, of course, my favorite question, and this is going to come up because if I don't mention it, you're going to get a bunch of emails either way.
Okay.
How do people dive into this more? I mean, I know you have courses,
I do.
and I'm pretty sure you're launching I'm pretty sure you wrote a book. Is that what I have heard?
A workbook, yes.
Awesome.
I have 2 different courses. They have a lot of shared. Right, I'm trying to build a bridge, right, between the 2 parties. So there's a lot of shared lessons, or components of lessons, and experiences that I have them do connected to the lessons, but they are different. One is geared more towards where, if you are predominantly the victim, we've all experienced all 3, right? Or if you're predominantly in a relationship, been the gaslighter, right? So they're geared towards that. The workbook for the victim is being edited right now. And I'm a green-based business. So I try, it's mostly going to be a downloadable book. If you want to print it up, that's on you. You get to print it up. But I've been working really hard. I'm super excited about the workbook. The one for the gaslighter is going to come out later in the year, but, even without the workbook, the courses are available either video-based or MP3. So cool. I'm trying to make it so people can learn in their favorite way to learn.
Multiple mediums.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Multiple mediums. I am going to be doing fall cohorts for both the addict in recovery and
do you teach those yourself, or do you have staff? Awesome. For everybody listening, that is so, and get in while you still can, because as brilliant as Sarah is, she might not always be the one to teach you. One day she'll be certifying other people. So I always say, if the person who's at the forefront is still teaching, I always say, get in there and take that freaking course as fast as you can, because you'll never get it as better from the source. So that's exciting to hear.
That being said, I do also have some people that are already certified. I do have a training program for helping professionals.
And one of them, who I know personally, she's the one that introduced us. She is phenomenal at what she's done, and she owes all the credit to you. She said that the way you taught her is the reason she's so great at it. That's awesome. That's exciting. Yeah.
Well, I bring that up because yes, you can do it with me, but don't limit it to me. If you want to do this work, and my courses my groups do get full, I have it categorized between therapist and coach, so that you can know, like, I want a therapist specifically because I don't have one, or I already got a therapist. I want, all I need is a coach who
and personality types matter too. So for those listening who you're not liking Sarah and her energy and the way she's wording things, you have other options too. And how can they find those practitioners? Do you have it on your website?
They are on my website under the resources tab. It'll say find a specialist.
Awesome. I love to hear it. Anything else that they need to know? Any kind of other free resources that you have that they can dive into to kind of get their feet wet?
Yeah. I mean, I got my podcast. I've got 2 seasons. I'm not currently recording one. I'm going to start up again in the fall.
Ooh, cool. But you have there, all the past episodes are still accessible.
They're still accessible. Great. I'll keep them. Great. So there's 2 full seasons. It's called Deconstructing Gaslighting.
Great.
So that's a really great free resource, because I do a lot of psychoed in
I love that.
But also their story, the first season especially is probably my favorite. I'm going to go back to that style in my season 3, where people just shared their stories.
Yeah.
And then I deconstructed it for them. I basically explained why it was gaslighting.
Yeah. Oh, so, yeah. I love that. I love it. Well, really maybe you'll have to have my wife on there, and she can tattle on me and all the all the nonsense that came out of my mouth in the first couple of years of all this. I'm sure she would. I don't know if I have the balls to listen to that episode when it's done, but we'll see. Maybe. Well, this was so awesome. I love it. This lived up to the hype. I am so big on distilling these things. I think people underestimate language and the differences that all of us have when we hear a word. And I think we do need to have more of these discussions, because I think we underestimate the power of a title. To call someone a gaslighter, to call them a sex addict, a porn addict. I think all of these things we do need to be careful, because I think what the brain does with those words sometimes can really be unhelpful to the journey that we're trying to go. And I think a lot of people don't know that their definition's problematic. And so I love conversations like this, because your definition could be problematic, and you might be a gaslighter yourself. And so I think it's a fun thing to explore for all of us, because the last thing we want to do is gaslight someone we love. And
that's right.
I think the smarter we are, the further we are from when that happens. And if you do it, apologize. You guys,
Right.
you know, owning up to this goes a long way. You know, that's how you rebuild trust, is when your wife understands that you know what gaslighting is, you know why you did it, and you know how to avoid it. I cannot tell you guys how healing that is. And that's why I would encourage all of you to buy this workbook and figure this out, because you can't, I've learned this, Sarah. The apologies that mean something are not, I'm sorry for blank. That doesn't mean shit.
Right.
What really hits home is when you can say, hey, remember that time I did this? What I've learned is I do that a lot. I do it for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, and I don't want to do that to you ever again. And here's my plan for that. And feel free to call me out anytime I do that. It's just that sorry. And you know, did you notice I didn't even say the word sorry? I just said, hey, can we sit down and can I educate you about some of the things that I did incorrectly, and my plan to change them? That goes way further than I'm sorry. I mean, you know, I'm sorry, or again, we're just talking about more words. You know, apologies that mean the most are, do you know what you did to me? Do you know the impact? And do you know how to avoid it? And do you know how you're going to prevent it from happening again? And I think that your workbook is going to help people become smart enough. And then last time, just to repeat, when is the courses that you have coming up?
The group cohorts, they're going to start in August.
Okay, awesome.
They can sign up on my website now.
Perfect. I will make sure that everyone has that information. Well, this was so great, Sarah.
Thanks.
I love this.
Oh my gosh.
I can't wait for your podcast to come back out. This is definitely something that I think should continue to be talked about. And I love what you said about your bringing back season 1. People need context. You know, information's great, but we got to hear examples. We got to hear stories. It's very difficult for us to apply it to our situation without that. So I love to hear that you are continuing to lean in. You have more content coming down the street. This was great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Roland.